Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host Speaker. How's it going, Speaker?
I'm good. Welcome back, everyone.
Hello, hello. We got a heavy topic today, and a huge one at that. We decided we were going to talk about the Vatican. All the scandals, all the sins, all of the secrets. So it's a pretty massive topic we're trying to tackle today.
Yeah, there really is a lot surrounding this, and it's not something that we can totally fully cover, because we do get messages every week like you left out this or you left out that. We have to try to calculate how much we want to fit in there and what we want to chuck on the surface and what we want to really bring out. That's why comments are great. That's why we love all your comments, like saying different things, bringing up different aspects and topics that we haven't touched. I'm also in the middle of starting a Discord. So by the time this video comes out, we'll have a link down there. I think that link is available for like 1 or 2 days or something. But in there, we'll have all our podcasts categorized. And yeah, feel free and be happy. It would really mean a lot for all of you to jump in there and just say your 2 cents, post links, and further these topics that we talk about into a broader range.
There you go. So yeah, this is a heavy conversation. I want to kind of warn our viewers to arm yourselves, because we are going to get into, towards the end, we're going to talk a lot about the pedophilia within the Vatican and within the church, the Satanism and allegations of that. So just fair warning for you guys out there listening. Also,
anyone that listens to our podcast should know that we tackle these from time to time. I'm sure they're prepped.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's not in any way implicating all Catholics whatsoever. We understand there's millions and millions of really great people who are Catholic. This is not to malign them in any way, shape, or form, but just pointing out some of the scandals and secrets of the Vatican. So I think we should start with a little bit of brief history, recent history, kind of starting with when Pope Francis came to be in power. And I think that's really important to highlight this, because it kind of tells you a lot about where we're at today. I think that we are in the final stages of their preparations for a new world order. What do you think?
Yeah, no, 100%. Pope Francis has been probably the most destructive pope there has ever been, and the most outlandish, vocal one, and completely hypocritical to the church in every way.
Yeah. And I wanted to point out some of those, the hypocrisies, the sort of alliance with the UN, who is and has a very long history of being very much in support of abortion, depopulation, population control, that sort of a thing. And so it is kind of an unholy alliance there. And then also, again, with their alliances with China, especially just recently renewing their agreement with China, and all of the atrocities that have gone on in China. And it's just the Vatican turning a blind eye to all of that, sort of. So
the Vatican turns a blind eye to a lot of things. So.
Absolutely, they do. They absolutely do. But I want to step back and look at when this change took place, when Pope Benedict was ousted. And that's important to look at, because according to certain reports and evidence, we believe that the Obama administration was heavily involved in that. And Obama was reportedly eager to dethrone Benedict. Well, first of all, Benedict was more traditionalist. I'm not saying he was necessarily a good pope either, but he was more traditionalist, and he went against certain things and certain agendas that the Obama administration and Soros were pushing. For one thing, Obama was very pro-Islam, and they were pushing for regime change in Libya, Egypt, war in Syria. And Benedict had come out very openly against Islam and terrorism. And this was during a time also when George Soros-backed organizations, were moving to open borders and mass migration, into these European countries. And so Pope Benedict was really standing in the way of their agenda in that regard. And also Benedict was forming some sort of alliance with Russian Orthodox Church at that time as well. And as we know, Soros had his hands, a lot of NGOs were fueling these color revolutions in Eastern Europe and trying to destabilize that region. So it really wasn't to their benefit for there to be some sort of alliance between the Vatican and the Russian Orthodox Church at that time.
Yeah, and it's important to note with Benedict, he was the first pope since Gregory in 1415 to resign his post.
Yes, so that resignation was a huge deal. And allegedly, the Obama administration was part of what forced Benedict to resign. There was a lot of financial scandal going on then as well. And there's allegations that the Obama administration, Obama, Hillary, Soros, were kind of behind that, exposing certain financial scandals in order to legitimize him leaving. Okay, not saying that there weren't actual financial scandals, because there likely were. There has always been at the Vatican, right? Allegedly, there was this sort of financial blackmail that occurred to oust Benedict. So January 1st, 2013, Deutsche Bank owns all the ATMs in the Vatican City. Well, they were shut down in the Vatican City. And that cost the Vatican about $40,000 a day. And the reason why they shut it down, they justified it by saying there was this failure to comply by the Vatican with the EU's anti-money laundering laws. And there's probably some legitimacy to that, because the Vatican's never been very transparent, and there has always been a lot of embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. But so the ATMs were shut down. Then Benedict announces his resignation February 11th, 2013. And I kid you not, very next day, February 12th, 2013, the Vatican gets cleared to resume credit card transactions. So it looks like they were sort of strong-arming the Vatican to get what they wanted. They wanted Benedict out. And then when WikiLeaks emails were leaked, we have emails now showing evidence that Benedict was forced out by a coup organized by Obama, Hillary, and Soros. There's this email that specifically references, quote unquote, the Catholic Spring. So they were conspiring, it looks like, to have a sort of Catholic Spring in the same vein as the Arab Spring. But this would have been obviously a coup designed to oust Benedict. And this evidence was so compelling that there's actually been some Catholic leaders that sent a letter to President Trump in January 2017 to ask the Trump administration to investigate this, stating that, we have reasons to believe that a Vatican regime change was engineered by the Obama administration. One other funny thing is that it was exactly 1 year after that email, that Catholic Spring email that was sent on February 11th, 2012, exactly to the day is the date that Benedict actually announced his resignation on February 11th, 2013. Interesting. Seems like it's all by design, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so that's kind of the brief history on how that coup seems to have transpired. But so they brought in Pope Francis. It's very anti-Trump, anti-nationalism, very pro-open borders, pro-China, pro-socialism, pro-communism, pro-UN, very much pushing the green agenda. And this UN green agenda, it's kind of like a religion in itself, right? I mean,
oh, it is. It is. It's a religion of socialism, religion of communism.
And a religion of the earth, of protecting the earth. They take it that far. And so it's very interesting that the Pope Francis, is pushing this. you know, and he's partnering in lockstep with the UN, who I've said, you know, they promote sterilization, abortion, population control. And this is stuff that historically the Catholic Church has been very, very much against. And
well, it's totally against their belief system.
exactly.
It is
Exactly.
it is a betrayal to Catholicism.
It is. And Pope Francis is just this extremist far leftist. And he has this advisor, Jeffrey Sachs. And Jeffrey Sachs is this longtime Soros associate and advisor. And he is one of the leading experts on climate change, like an advisor to Pope Francis on climate change. He's been to the Vatican dozens of times, given speeches there and everything. We have WikiLeaks emails that show that Soros paid $650,000 to influence Pope Francis to go on September 2015 and visit the USA and try to shift the national paradigm here in the USA leading up to the 2016 election, and get some buy-in from all the bishops and on racial justice, economic issues, and just basically solidify an alliance to go with Pope Francis's and Soros's agenda, which is really, in essence, the New World Order agenda. Because you have to look at it this way: they're in their final stages of planning their New World Order and implementing it, and they need three aspects to operate and coordinate simultaneously. They need a governmental body. That's their UN. Okay. They also need a financial system, and they need a moral or spiritual leader to legitimize their agenda. Well, obviously, the Vatican is providing that position as the moral and spiritual leader for their New World Order agenda. The UN provides the government. As far as the financial aspect goes, it's really interesting. I caught this video by Soros. I think it was in like somewhere around 2009, 2008, something like that. But he actually said in an interview, basically talking about China's role in the New World Order. And what he said was, I think that this is the moment, because it really is necessary to bring China into the creation of a new world order, a financial world order.
What sort of a financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. They are kind of reluctant members of the IMF. They play along, but they don't make much of a contribution because it's not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order, that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order. And I think this would be a more stable one, where you would have a coordinated policies. I think the makings of it are already there, because the G20, in agreeing to peer reviews, effectively is moving in that direction.
So that you can see as part of their plan. And as far as Pope Francis's job, I think, and in this New World Order agenda, again, it's to provide this moral legitimacy to their agenda, the New World Order agenda, but also to sort of unite all of these different religions and under the umbrella of one world religion. And you can see that in this video that he put out in 2016, And it was all about uniting all of these religions. And I'm going to probably play a clip right now so that you guys can see part of that.
La mayor parte de los habitantes del planeta se declaran creyentes. Esto debería provocar un diálogo entre las religiones. No debemos dejar de orar por él y colaborar con quienes piensan distinto.
Confío en Buda.
Creo en Dios.
Creo en Jesucristo.
Creo en Dios, Alá.
Muchos piensan distinto, sienten distinto, buscan a Dios o encuentran a Dios de diversa manera. En esta multitud, en este abanico de religiones, hay una sola certeza que tenemos para todos. Todos somos hijos de Dios.
Creo en el amor.
Creo en el amor.
Creo en el amor.
Creo en el amor.
Confío en vos para difundir mi petición de este mes. Que el diálogo sincero entre hombres y mujeres de diversas religiones conlleve frutos de paz y justicia. Confío en tu oración.
So what you can see is why they brought Francis in. He has a very specific role in these final stages of the New World Order of uniting all of the religions so that they will be ready and prepared to have a one world religion. He's one of the three pillars of the New World Order. He's providing the legitimacy, the moral backup of what the New World Order agenda is. And he really just echoes everything the UN says. So, but you can tell that Soros's job is really to foment unrest, chaos, crisis throughout the world, so that the people are prepared for the UN to come in as a governing body to be the solution to the chaos.
Yeah, and there is a few archbishops and stuff like that who are speaking out about it, obviously to great detriment to themselves. I mean, Archbishop Vigano is probably the one that comes to mind, who sent a letter to President Trump. I think it was a couple of months ago. Do you remember that?
I do. It was a very good letter. We'll have to show it on the screen.
Yeah, so Archbishop Vigano sent a 3-page letter to Trump expressing his belief in a number of conspiracy theories, you can put asterisks next to that, including the existence of a deep state opposing Mr. Trump from within the US federal government and the deep church, comprised of the children of darkness. Now, these are his words. A belief that the COVID-19 pandemic response represents a colossal operation of social engineering, and the notion that recent anti-racism protests in the United States evoke a Masonic ideals of those who want to dominate the world by driving God out of the courts, out of the schools, out of the families, and out of the churches.
Yeah. And you can see that being implemented right now with COVID-19. What they're doing is, so the UN came out, we saw Prince Charles come out, and we just this last week saw Pope Francis come out. And they are all using this COVID-19 crisis, their words, it's a crisis, and piggybacking the climate change crisis on top of that, and saying, look, we can't wait any longer. Okay, this is a catastrophe. And we've put it off for far too long. So we're going to go forward, and we're not only just going to go forward with it, it's going to be like a military style campaign, is what Prince Charles said. But what Pope Francis said just last week in a statement that he put out was that it was time for the world to accept a new financial sort of world order, that capitalism during COVID-19 clearly failed us. Okay, and that we need to start something new, a new financial system for the whole world, and that it needs to be one that rejects the idea of personal property and is for the common good. Now, what does that sound like to you?
Ooh, sounds like socialism to me.
Yeah, or communism. Yeah.
Shock. Either or, they're tied with the same brush.
And then it's no coincidence that just last week also, Pope Francis totally snubbed Pompeo when he came in town, and he re-upped and renewed his agreement with China. Because as you can see in that statement from Soros, they're implementing their plan. They're trying to bring in this new financial world system, and China is part of it.
Of course, and you got to remember China, a full communist country. I mean, there's been reports of something very similar to North Korea going on, where they have to put a picture of Xi up in their house and pray to it every morning. I mean, God in that country has been replaced with the communist dictator, which is President Xi. Right, and to have any alliance from the Catholic Church to a country like that, not to mention the detention camps and all that's been leaking and it's been going on, like it's strange in the least, unless there is some other agenda here, which there is.
Absolutely, there is. And so why did they choose Bergoglio and instead of Benedict? Well, we already talked about how Benedict was traditionalist. He was in their way of their agenda, and they needed someone who was going to back up their agenda. And so Bergoglio's a radical left pope, but we really need to talk a little bit about his history as well. You know, it's no coincidence they wanted a Jesuit pope. Bergoglio is actually the first non-European pope in more than 1,200 years, and he's the first member of the Jesuit order to lead the Vatican. And Obama, no surprise, Obama was one of the first to congratulate Pope Francis because he was part of getting Pope Francis in that position, I believe. So, but Bergoglio has a dark past. I mean, he was prominent in the church during Argentina's dictatorship in the 1970s, this period known as the Dirty War, when over 30,000 people disappeared. And he's been accused of not standing up to Argentina's military junta and conspiring actually with the junta to hide political prisoners from the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. So he's working with them. He was a conspirator or collaborator with them, allegedly. But several survivors of the Dirty War have come forward and accused Bergoglio of this, of being a collaborator with the military dictatorship. And he was actually called to testify in court, which he eventually, I believe, did, but was very evasive with his answering on that. So, but as we know, with a lot of these South American countries and regime changes, the CIA is usually involved, right? And so I think that was the case here with Argentina in the 70s under Operation Condor. And with that history and Bergoglio's involvement and cooperation with the military dictatorship then probably helped him to be a favored candidate to replace Benedict, with the CIA knowing that Bergoglio was cooperative back then. Does that make sense?
And, you know, not just with that sort of things, but which we'll get into in a minute, but his continual support and protection of pedophiles, and we'll get into that in a minute. But
absolutely, yeah. And so the Jesuit order is something that we could spend hours speaking about on its own, and so it's just way too much, way too deep to get into all in this podcast because there's so many aspects that we still have to cover. But really, just in a nutshell, if you're trying to describe the Jesuit order on the surface, you think, okay, they're very prominent as far as education, they're very strict, militant. But really, when you dig deeper, for centuries, this Jesuit order has been accused of extreme pursuits for power and control. They've been accused of being involved in assassinations. They are connected to the origins of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. They appeared to have control of the Knights of Malta and be connected with them. Lots of different aspects to go into here. Also, there's been some high-profile assassinations that they've been accused of being involved in. Basically that they were so power hungry. The whole idea behind the Jesuit order was to really assassinate or try to oust anybody in control and put someone from the Jesuit order in control in every country so that they would achieve ultimate power. And those are the accusations against them. So currently, Arturo Sosa is the superior general of the Jesuit order. He's known as the Black Pope. And the Black Pope's been very supportive of Pope Francis, as you can imagine. But he's also very anti-Trump administration. He's actually come out and said that there is a plan by the Trump administration to oust Pope Francis. So what's interesting is the dynamic at play here because, Pope Francis comes from the Jesuit order and the Black Pope is the leader of the Jesuit order. So, as the Pope, the Jesuit's supposed to follow the Jesuit order, and the Black Pope are supposed to follow the Pope. But with the Pope being a Jesuit, you really have to wonder how much influence the Black Pope has on the Vatican. And I'm certainly not the only person to question this. Of course, many people have come up with the same line of thought, and especially people who have researched this, spent their whole lives researching this actually, and said that the Black Pope is very, very influential on the Vatican.
Yeah, you see, with their endeavors and why they don't like Trump, one, because he's calling out these secret societies and he's calling out these theories and he's calling out what's going on under the surface. Of course, they can't have that. But a big part of their play of what they don't like and really puts a cog in whatever New World Order plan that they have is the thought of nationalism. National sovereignty scares the shit out of them. It
absolutely gets in the way of their plans.
100%.
Just as Pope Benedict was getting in the way of their plans and they got him out, they need Trump out because Trump absolutely interferes with their New World Order plans. They hate him and they're doing everything they can to try to get him out, is my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a pretty solid opinion. And, of course, what we've seen with the huge backing and arrests within sexual abuse and pedophilia over the last couple of years, unprecedented arrests and operations, it doesn't surprise me that the Vatican doesn't have some sort of a hand in a lot of those things, especially the ones connected to religious institutions.
Definitely. And I want to spend a good amount of time talking about the rampant pedophilia within the Vatican, within these, within the priesthood. But first I want to talk about the financial aspect, the financial scandals, the wealth of the Vatican, and then we'll get into the darker stuff and spend the rest of the time on that.
Well, the money's tied to the pedophilia as well. I mean, they're connected by a reason.
Oh, yeah. It's all connected for sure. And there's too many financial scandals to list them all. I mean, we're talking centuries here, people, But the truth is we don't actually know the exact wealth or net worth of the Vatican. To me, in my opinion, it's got to be in the trillions. I mean, most banks will estimate somewhere around 15 billion. I personally think that's entirely too low. What do you think?
It's really hard to put a digit on. I mean, just from being in the Vatican and seeing the Vatican, and I'll get into that later, but the things that place holds, whether it's from works of art to ancient texts and stuff like that, things that are priceless. There's priceless artifacts in there, and not to mention the certain countries with tax exemption and stuff like that. All that money's, a lot of that money will get funneled to the Vatican as well.
Yep.
It's a huge way.
And real estate too. So the problem is that the Vatican has been at the center of all of these embezzlement fraud scandals for years and years. And it makes it really hard to grasp the accuracy in reporting because of that. And then also, like you just mentioned, some of the countries like America, for example, don't require religious groups to release financial statements, which is probably why the Vatican has kept its gold in the U.S. Federal Reserve. So it is really hard to put a number on it, but personally, I think 15 billion is way too low. And anytime that we come up with a number, it's always nothing like the number that they report on things. So there's just a lot of obfuscation when it comes to their finances, a lot of embezzlement and a lot of fraud. And when Pope Benedict was forced to resign, he was under pressure over a lot of financial scandals and allegations that were going on at the time. And when Francis came in, he supposedly came in to offer transparency, right? Like anything this Pope says is what he does. What he says and what he does are two totally different things. But one financial scandal, for example, it's just one example that has never been solved, and is the fact that the belief that the Vatican collaborated with the Nazis, and that we do actually have some documents as evidence to support this. But the Vatican actually profited from the Nazi gold that was plundered from the Jews during World War II. So that's just one small example. But just last week, there's this new report that came out that 450 million has disappeared from the Vatican, and the Vatican did their own investigation. And they themselves charged 15 people, 7 of them within the Vatican itself, of embezzlement, abuse of power, and corruption. And one of the main suspects in this recent embezzlement scandal is Cardinal Giovanni Angelo Becchio. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name, sorry, but
there's some really hard names going on here.
Yeah, it's true. But he reportedly embezzled money, wired cash to Australia to help ensure the testimony of victims in an abuse trial against Cardinal George Pell, who was accused of molesting choir boys. So Cardinal Pell was a finance minister at the Vatican, and he uncovered Cardinal Becchio's corrupt management of the Vatican cash. And in order to shut Cardinal Pell up, Cardinal Becchio embezzled money, shipped it to Australia, supposedly paid off people to ensure that there would be some victim testimonies at a trial against Cardinal Pell. Really, to me, the Vatican is as much about trying to provide a quote-unquote moral support for their New World Order agenda as it is about power and money and control.
Control, power, always big ones, especially in spiritual circles. I mean, we've known since the beginning of history. I mean, these sort of institutions, government is another institution where this happens, where power becomes a dominant driving force, and through that power, corruption exudes from it. I mean, if you go back in history for the Catholic Church, there's a long history of abuse on the higher echelons of Catholicism.
And I think we need to get into the abuse, the long history of pedophilia and child abuse within the Vatican and throughout, and then get into even the darker stuff, which is the Satanism, satanic ritual abuse, and that. So what do you got?
Oh, there, the number of pedophile cases or sexual abuse cases from priests, clergymen, within Catholicism is it's mind blowing, and not in a good way. It is something that it feels like it's woven within the DNA of the Catholic Church. I mean, just some of the big cases recently that I can touch on is one in Argentina with a priest called Nicola Carati, who was running this. The school was called the Antonio Pavolio Institute of the Deaf. Now, in this institute, there was, of course, extremely vulnerable children. I mean, they were deaf. Some of them also had learning problems, learning difficulties, and there was this sect of about 14, 15 priests who were molesting them and abusing them. Now, this was known to Pope Francis. Pope Francis knew of this abuse. Multiple letters got sent to him of this happening in Argentina, yet he did nothing. He did nothing from 2008 to 2016. He didn't even acknowledge any of these perpetrators. He completely switched it under the rug, and if anything, he covered for it. In the end, this priest got arrested because of Argentinian law enforcement. They shut down the school. They arrested 14, 15 priests. A lot of them are on trial now, but a lot of them are quite old and sickly, you can say. Karati's 83. But even the Argentinian police said that the Vatican never cooperated with the investigation, and still are not cooperating with the investigation. So that's just one. There was another one also in Argentina, and it's very interesting that a lot of these coming out of Argentina, where Pope Francis originally came from. And that this case was from a priest called Gustavo Sincheta. Now, he was said to be the protege of Pope Francis. And for years, once again, from 2015 to 2017, Pope Francis denied any allegations and also accepted him back to the Vatican while these inquiries were going on. They shipped him off to the Vatican, and they hid him in the Vatican. And this is not a rare occurrence.
The Pope of Transparency is hiding and covering for pedophiles.
But this is like I said, this is not a rare occasion. Like, these are big name priests, but this web is too crazy to imagine. I mean, there's this whistleblower. First, one interesting thing I found out in 2001, a new policy was put in place in the Vatican, and that was first required all sexual abuse and pedophilia claims to get reported first to the Vatican before the local diocese. Right, so it had to all of this had to go through the Vatican before anything happened, right? And if they weren't serious claims, and this is there was a whistleblower that came out. His name was Patrick Wall. He was a former priest and a monk, and he has now testified in over 2,000 sexual abuse cases.
Wow.
But he faced a moral dilemma about 10 years ago where so many of these things were coming through. He had to make a decision, am I with them or am I going to do something about it? And of course, he turned whistleblower, and he's an expert now when it comes to these trials and cases, and they always call on him when these things happen. But he explains that the Vatican has created a system, and he called this system the geographic solution. Now, the geographic solution is when there is a scandal that is uncovered, either by a bishop, a clergyman, anyone in the church, what they do, if it's a lesser crime, they will move these priests to a different community that have no idea about the scandal, they have no idea about the priest. They will organize it, and they will send him there. If it is too big to cover up, as in they can't send him within through the country, they will send them out of the country. Most of the time, either back to the Vatican, under the Vatican protection, or to Africa, which makes sense. It's a lot harder to get extradition. And a lot of these priests that they are moving out of the country, some of them have arrest warrants for them. Some of them are wanted for child sexual abuse in Canada, in America, in Australia. But they get lost and they get jumbled up in this system, the geographic solution.
Unbelievable. You have to imagine how massive this is. I mean, we're probably talking, what, hundreds or maybe thousands of priests and bishops and clergymen?
It's really hard to put a number on. I mean, there is.
I know you showed me the list. we were talking before recording, and you showed me this long list, a history of child sex abuse within the Catholic Church, and it's just so massive. It's overwhelming, isn't it?
I don't think there's any other industry. I mean, we know these sort of things happen in Hollywood, but I don't think there is any other industry or institution where this is so systemic. It is an absolute poison and a plague within this institution. I mean, that there is a group called SNAP, which stands for Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And this group, it's a non-profit, and I'm a little bit weary of non-profits. So I looked into it a little bit, but it doesn't look like there is any mega donors. So there is no Bill or Melinda Gates donors or anything like that. So that led me to trust it a little bit more. They have 56,000 members, from people from the Philippines to Australia to Canada to America to Africa, Europe, all over the globe, of people that have been abused by priests. Credible reports, multiple reports of certain bishops and priests. And they have a database of priests that are wanted, or at least questioned or warrants in some way, shape, or form. And this database, last time I checked, had 4,400 priests that are either on the run.
Oh my gosh.
With photos and with all their allegations against them, and some with full-on arrest warrants. So that's 4,400 priests that are still alive. Some have, fled to small community religious towns in like France and Belgium, and all being covered up by the church.
And this is all just what we know about. I mean, that's the tip of the
100%.
Iceberg. Because they cover it up. Everything goes through the Vatican. How much of that actually gets out,
Well, there was a report that came out in 2012, and this is 2012 alone, and this is just in America, that settlements of sexual abuse cases, the Vatican has settled almost $3 billion worth of sexual abuse cases, and that was just in 2012.
Jeez. It's sickening. So you have to wonder, why? Why is it so systemic? And I think that kind of morphs into this, the occult practices, the Satanism, those allegations within the church, and it being incorporated and kind of melted into their practices of pedophilia.
I just want to bring up on the fact that I think a lot of this, people that see this and people that know about this and people that are not completely blinded by their faith or their trust in the higher echelons of Catholicism, have been pushed away from religion in general, not just Catholicism, but many religions where this is a problem.
I know, and I hurt for those people. I really do.
Yeah, Islam's another example. I mean, there's systemic pedophilia going straight through there as well. But I think that and these situations, these cases, have turned a lot of people away. I mean, I knew a lot of people that I grew up with that grew up Catholic and were practicing in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not every day, but they were practicing at least. And I talk to them now, and they just don't have. I mean, I had a friend that always used to carry a rosary and was very religious, and I think I talked to him a couple of months ago, and he was like, "Nah, man, I've gone the other way of that. Like from what I've seen, I mean, they see evil in the church now, and it's sad because."
Right, because the whole idea of the love of Christ has been usurped by a completely evil satanic agenda. And this is not to malign the millions of good Catholics.
No.
It's simply
the higher echelon.
Exactly. And so once people kind of awaken to that, then I fully understand that many of them turn completely away because they get there's such this cognitive dissonance. You know, these people they were led to trust the most have completely betrayed them and betrayed their trust. And so they've just walked away entirely instead of necessarily separating the two, which is the doctrine, the belief in Jesus, separated completely from these evildoers. And so I do feel bad for people who have been caught in the middle and awoken to this evil within the Catholic Church, but just completely have rejected religion or faith in all forms, basically.
And it doesn't surprise me, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, I have friends too. I could completely relate. I have friends who have done the very same thing.
And well, this is why we see children now even paying it no state of mind whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They've totally turned away. And like I've said this a million times, I'm not religious, but I respect all these religious practices, and I believe in, you know, Christian countries or Christian values that, you know, they're there for a reason.
Yeah. But, you know, we do have to talk about these allegations, of which there are many, about Satanism within the church, satanic practices, rituals, etc. And there have been some legitimate claims to this, in my opinion. And I'm going to list just a few of them. So there's this Father Malachi Martin, and he wrote several books. He was an exorcist, actually. One of the books that he wrote was called The Keys of This Blood, in which he spoke about a satanic ritual held in Rome in 1963. And I'm just going to read to you what he wrote. He said, "Indeed, Pope John Paul II had alluded somberly to the smoke of Satan, which has entered the sanctuary, an oblique reference to the enthronement ceremony by Satanists in the Vatican. Besides, the incident of satanic pedophilia rites and practices was already documented among certain bishops and priests as widely dispersed as in Turin in Italy and South Carolina in the United States. The cultic arts of satanic pedophilia are considered by professionals to be the culmination of the fallen archangel's rites." So basically, he had testimony as to satanic practices that were happening back in 1963. And Malachi Martin was a former Jesuit priest. He was highly critical of the Vatican and various books. He's also, as I mentioned, an exorcist. He died in 1999 from a brain hemorrhage due to a fall in his apartment, which is somewhat suspicious. Later, there was a documentary that was put out, and the documentary said that it was a demonic force that pushed him. And that, to me, I know someone did. I think someone did. I think someone was out against him for speaking out about these things. What do you think?
Well, there's always these weird cases. I mean, you look at John Paul I, who was only Pope for 30 days. They called him the Smiling Pope, and everyone had growing praise for him. And then he suddenly died, He was one of the shortest serving popes ever. It's actually a real interesting story, and there has been a lot of conspiracies surrounding him and if he was murdered for various reasons.
Lots of these kinds of strange deaths. Before his death in 2016, the Vatican's chief exorcist, Father Gabriel Amorth, said, "The devil resides in the Vatican, and you can see the consequences." He said there are cardinals who do not believe in Jesus and bishops who are linked to the demon. So he's another one who came out. I don't think his death was suspicious. He was like 91, and I think it was like a heart condition. But there is the story of Father Alfred Joseph Kuntz. And he is a Catholic priest who was also friends with Malachi Martin. And he was investigating satanic pedophilia, child abuse, satanic ritual abuse within the clergy. And he was found with his throat slit in 1998 in the church in Wisconsin. And so that I don't think has ever been solved, probably been covered up. But Malachi Martin had said that he believed that Luciferians had killed him. So as many priests who are willing to come out and speak out about this, they're hushed up just as quickly.
Oh yeah, and like you said, there's not just the stigma of Satanism in the Vatican, the symbolism of it all around the Vatican.
Yeah, I want you to talk about that because I know you've visited the Vatican, but before that, I want to mention one other quick thing. So in 2018, there was a report, a Pennsylvania grand jury report, that does actually talk about satanic ritual abuse. There's a young boy that underwent satanic ritual abuse by 4 priests, reported in this report. And a lot of this has been redacted, but there are other incidents in that same report that talk very graphically. One priest sorry guys, I'm going to get graphic, but you guys need to know the depths of the evil that we're dealing with. One priest rinsed out the mouth of a 9-year-old boy he'd sodomized with holy water. Another priest sodomized another boy with a 7-inch long crucifix. If this is not satanic, I don't know what is. Pure evil.
It's pure evil. It's demonic in every sense of the word.
I mean, I'm shaking right now from the horror, the disgust. I just feel so much pain and anguish for these child victims, and so much anger that I want this to be exposed and brought to light. And
with the Vatican and you're just talking about cases that have happened not within the Vatican itself. I mean, you got to look at the Vatican as it is pretty much its own separate entity, the Holy See. It's a sovereign entity. There's only 925 residents, and this place is built like Fort Knox.
So you've been to the Vatican. Tell me about the vibe that you felt there, because I know we've talked about this, before recording. Just give the listeners an idea of the vibe that you picked up on when you were there.
Well, there's a lot of beautiful things in the Vatican. Like I said, works of art. It's got some of the most amazing, expensive works of art in the world, sculptures and stuff like that as well. And those things all very attracted me. But when I first walked in there, because like I said, it's built like Fort Knox. There's walls all around it. And that's why when you see a pope sitting there trying to champion open borders while he's behind the wall of his own city, is it disgusts me, really, just the pure hypocrisy behind it. But walking into the Vatican, and the vibe is very important, and I go off vibe and energy a lot. You know this. But what I felt when I first walked in there was something was off. It didn't feel right. How else can you explain it? There was a void. There was a void there. There was something missing. It seemed to me like it was like an inverted copy of a higher, holier place, but a twisted replica, if that makes sense. It seemed like it was counterfeit.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not really other ways to describe it. This is the best way I can. But it just seemed to me that it was counterfeit, that it was incredibly fake. And when I was walking past some things, I mean, and then I had cabinets of, I think there was about 30 Bibles in the cabinets, and these Bibles were just littered with gold and jewels and gems and emeralds, and they were like nothing I've ever seen before. And the thing that just kept going through my mind was it just didn't feel like a place of God to me. It felt like a place of gold. And then actually seeing and noticing some of the art, especially around St. Peter's Basilica, there's an altar, and it's really famous if you've seen it. But it is an altar supposedly of the clouds, and there's what looked to me as sort of a portal. But when you stand back from it and you really start to get a sense of what it actually is like a dead sheep. To me, it looks demonic. There's also pictures of Moloch on the floor in St. Peter's Basilica, which a lot of people don't notice. But there's you know, and when I was noticing these sort of things, I mean, there's really grotesque things hidden in plain sight, and it's hard to believe that, you know, the people sitting there are worshipping and think it's a Christian church, because to me, the things I saw, it was a complete hypocrisy of Catholicism. I mean, there's idols all around the Basilica, and idols of what look to me as different gods, and we all know this goes against any sort of religious teachings, but that it's full of it. Another thing I noticed, I saw a Roman statue. Of course, there's a lot of Roman architecture there, but there was a Roman soldier carrying this thing that we call a fascist, which is like a bundle of sticks with an axe in it. Now, these are scattered all around the Vatican, and also have been seen in some really famous places. I mean, there's one in the chambers of, in the Chamber of Commerce in America, for example. There's one on Abraham Lincoln's statue, but the bundle of sticks, what it represents, it represents authoritarianism. It represents fascism, and it's hidden all over the place, and it's hidden in some very unique places that people would not even notice. I mean, Abraham Lincoln's statue that he sits on, his hands are covering piles of fascists. So that was an interesting thing that I noticed. But there's so much. And then, of course, the famous speaking from the serpent, which is what you were alluding to before, under the resurrection statue. That's what I think that you were meaning.
Yeah. And then, you know, what I think about also is what the Pope and these higher clergymen wear is the hats, the fish hats, which goes back way back, like Babylonian, Sumerian times. So way pre-Christian. And that to me screams that there's this element that has always been there within the church that is not Christian.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you take a zoom out of St. Peter's Square, it looks like a pregnant snake. And
Yep.
like I said, that famous picture of where he speaks and where he talks, where he does his sermon, is he's doing it from the mouth of a serpent. Now, all these things are not accidentally designed in the thing. There's serpents all around the Vatican, and I understand there's serpents in the Bible. I get it, but they're always either under the feet of God or something. They're not immortalized or praised. In this situation, they seem to be the pinnacle.
Right. So much is overwhelming when you take a step back and look at it all, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's so much more, but I think we've gone an hour already.
Yeah, and clearly we didn't cover everything. There's going to be tons of things that we left out, but that's what the comments are great for. If you have links or areas to send people research, definitely feel free to leave a comment and add to this conversation. It is a conversation because we could go on for hours talking about this. But the point is that this needs to be exposed. We need to shine light on this darkness.
Mm-hmm. And this is what I think the Discord will also be good for, where you guys can all talk amongst yourselves. We'll post links as well of stuff that we found in certain topics, and we can create a awesome little community there where we can teach each other and talk about certain topics. So that should be good when I get that up and running.
Sounds good. So check the links in the description. Please be sure to share this podcast, and we will see you back next time, right here on Hive Mind.
Still ravenous.